The ancient vessel. John Martinez stood at the viewport of NSS Defiant, staring at the vast expanse of stars. 200 years old, this human warship had earned the unflattering nickname Relic among the various species of the Galactic Confederation. As captain, Martinez knew his assignment here was essentially a career punishment, the military equivalent of being put out to pasture. Captain, the Viridian delegation requests permission to board for the scheduled tour, said Lisa Rice, his communications officer. Martinez sighed. Another day, another group of aliens coming to gawk at human antiquity. In 2478, humans were among the youngest members of the Confederation, still trying to prove their worth among species who had mastered space travel millennia ago. The Defiant, once the pride of Earth's fleet, now served as a floating museum and diplomatic vessel. Tell them they can dock in Bay 2, Martinez replied, and inform Lieutenant Wright to prepare the engine room for visitors. Down in engineering, Olivia Wright was already busy. Unlike most of the crew who viewed their posting as a dead end, she found genuine fascination in the Defiance systems. Her hands moved across an old physical control panel, adjusting power flows with practiced precision. Getting ready for the alien parade? Asked her assistant, Ryan Cooper. They can laugh all they want, Wright said, patting the metal housing of a massive power conduit. But this old girl has secrets they don't understand. The Viridian delegation arrived with typical flourish. Their tall, slender forms moved with fluid grace, their iridescent skin catching the light as they stepped through the airlock. Ambassador Kelrath led the group, his neck frills expanding slightly in what humans had learned was an expression of amused condescension. Captain Martinez, Kelrath said, bowing slightly. How quaint to be welcomed aboard such a historical vessel. Martinez forced a smile. The Defiant may be old, Ambassador, but she's still a commissioned warship of Earth. Of course, Kelrath replied, his translator conveying his patronizing tone perfectly. We're most interested in seeing this, what do you call it? Chemical propulsion backup system. As the tour progressed through the ship, the Viridians made little effort to hide their amusement. They took images of themselves beside control consoles with physical buttons, made jokes about the thickness of the hull plating, and marveled at the primitive weapon systems. And you actually fought wars with these? Asked one Viridian scientist, pointing at a rail gun mounting. This particular weapon could accelerate a projectile to a significant fraction of light speed, Commander Samuel Blackwood explained stiffly. As tactical officer, he took personal offense at their dismissive attitude. The kinetic energy was sufficient to penetrate any shielding technology of its era. Fascinating, the scientist replied, not bothering to hide his disbelief. Later, in the engine room, Wright gave her portion of the tour with barely contained frustration. The matter/antimatter reaction chamber was revolutionary for its time, she explained as the Viridians exchanged knowing glances. In fact, some of its principles are still used in modern systems. Yet you humans abandoned this design approach, Ambassador Kelrath noted. Perhaps because our crystalline drive cores are 10 times more efficient. Wright bit her tongue. Different technologies for different purposes, Ambassador. After the delegation finally departed, Martinez called his senior officers to the briefing room. The mood was somber. Well, that was humiliating, Blackwood muttered. Standard procedure, Martinez replied. They come, they mock, they leave. They don't understand what this ship is capable of, Wright insisted, leaning forward. The Defiant may be old, but her systems were built to last, to endure conditions that would fry their fancy crystalline technology. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps, but unless we face an enemy with weapons from 2 centuries ago, I doubt we'll ever find out. Little did they know that the Defiance moment was coming sooner than anyone expected. At the edge of Confederation space, the aggressive Kargan Empire was mobilizing, and they had developed something that would make the old warship suddenly, drastically relevant again. The tensions on the border of Confederation space had been building for months. The aggressive Kargan Empire, A species of reptilian humanoids known for their military prowess had been unusually active. Reports of their ships approaching the neutral zone were becoming more frequent. "We've been assigned to the diplomatic mission to Outpost Sigma," Captain Martinez informed his senior staff. "Apparently Earth's contribution to the peace talks is sending their museum piece." Commander Blackwood frowned. "The Kargans aren't known for diplomacy, sir. They respect strength, not history. Which is why we're bringing the Defiant," Martinez replied with a hint of sarcasm. "Nothing says strength like a 200-year-old warship." The journey to Outpost Sigma took 3 days at standard speed. Lieutenant Wright spent most of that time in engineering, running diagnostics on systems that hadn't been fully activated in decades. "What are you doing?" Ryan Cooper asked, finding her underneath a rarely used console. "Just checking the auxiliary weapon targeting systems," Wright replied. "You never know when old tech might come in handy." Cooper laughed. "Against Kargan dreadnoughts. Those things are equipped with graviton cannons and phase disruption fields." Wright emerged, wiping grease from her hands. The Defiant was built when humans were still fighting humans. She was designed to withstand anything we could throw at ourselves, which made her nearly indestructible by the standards of the time. At Outpost Sigma, the diplomatic station orbited a contested planet rich in rare minerals. 5 Confederation vessels were already present, including the massive Viridian flagship Crystal Ascended. The Defiant took its position, looking small and outdated among the sleek modern ships. "Defiant, please proceed to docking port 7, came the station controller's voice. "Ambassador Kelrath has requested your delegation attend the preliminary meeting immediately upon arrival." In the station's main conference chamber, representatives from 12 species gathered around a large table. The Kargan delegation sat opposite, their scaled faces unreadable, eyes constantly scanning the room like predators. When Martinez and his team entered, Ambassador Kelrath's neck frills rippled with what humans had come to recognize as amusement. "Ah, the Earth delegation arrives in their charming antique," Kelrath announced loudly. "Captain Martinez, I was just telling the Kargan ambassador about your fascinating vessel. A true relic of human history." Martinez nodded politely but said nothing. He noticed the Kargans studying him with more interest than the Viridians had shown. "Your vessel," the Kargan ambassador hissed through sharp teeth. "It uses no crystalline technology." "No," Martinez answered. "The Defiant predates Earth's adoption of Confederation standard technology." "Interesting," the Kargan replied, exchanging glances with his military aide. The meeting proceeded with the usual diplomatic posturing. The Kargans demanded mining rights to the contested planet, while the Confederation insisted on shared access. Meanwhile, Commander Blackwood noticed the Kargan military officers huddled in the corner, speaking in hushed tones. That night, back aboard the Defiant, Martinez called Blackwood to his quarters. "Something doesn't feel right," Martinez said. "The Kargans were too interested in our ship." Blackwood nodded. "I've been analyzing their fleet movements, sir. They've positioned at least 20 vessels just beyond sensor range. That's not a diplomatic force." "What are they planning?" Martinez wondered. "I don't know, but I took the liberty of running full diagnostics on our combat systems," Blackwood replied. "And Lieutenant Wright has been preparing some surprises in engineering." "On whose authority?" Martinez asked sharply. "Mine, sir," Blackwood admitted. "Call it a tactical precaution." Martinez stared out his viewport at the gleaming Confederation ships. "Those modern vessels are 100 times more powerful than the Defiant." "Yes, sir, but," Blackwood hesitated, "I've been studying old Earth military history. Sometimes the oldest weapons are the ones your enemy isn't prepared for." Little did they know how prophetic those words would soon become. The alarms blared across Outpost Sigma without warning. Red emergency lights flashed throughout the diplomatic station and the surrounding Confederation vessels. Captain Martinez was still in discussions with Earth representatives when the first explosions rocked the station. Sir, we have multiple Kargan warships dropping out of hyperspace. Lisa Rage shouted over the comm. They're launching some kind of energy pulse ahead of their attack fleet. Martinez rushed back to the Defiant along with his diplomatic team. Through the viewport, he watched in horror as the strange purple pulse washed over the Confederation fleet. One by one, the mighty ships went dark, their crystalline drive cores flickering and dying. What's happening to our ships? Martinez demanded as he reached the bridge. Some kind of targeted electromagnetic disruption, Commander Blackwood explained, studying the tactical display. It's specifically affecting crystalline technology. The Viridian flagship is completely disabled. And the Defiant? Martinez asked, settling into his command chair. We're being ignored, sir, Rise reported. The Kargans are moving past us toward the station. They don't consider us a threat. Martinez looked around his bridge, at the outdated consoles and physical controls that had been the source of so much mockery. A plan began to form. Lieutenant Wright, report, he ordered through the comm. Down in engineering, Olivia Wright was already moving with purpose, directing her team to different stations. Captain, our primary systems are intact, she responded. Whatever they hit the Confederation ships with, it doesn't affect our older technology. We're still running. Can you give me weapons and engines at full capacity? Wright looked at the dusty backup systems that hadn't been used in decades. It'll take some work, but yes. The old girl can fight. You have 30 minutes, Martinez said grimly. Blackwood, I need a battle plan based on what this ship can actually do, not what it's supposed to do on paper. The tactical officer nodded, already pulling up the ship's original combat protocols from the database. I've been studying these for months, sir. Never thought we'd actually use them. The Kargan attack continued. Their sleek warships surrounded the diplomatic station, ignoring the powerless Confederation vessels. The Defiant drifted, appearing as dead as the others, while inside, the crew worked frantically. In engineering, Wright and her team manually rerouted power conduits and reset ancient circuit breakers. Sweat dripped from her forehead as she worked. The railgun targeting system is completely offline, Ryan Cooper reported. We'd have to aim manually. Like they did in the old days, Wright replied. Get the mechanical backup online. On the bridge, Blackwood briefed the captain. Sir, we have an advantage they don't expect. The Defiant was built before networked combat systems. Everything can be operated independently, without computer assistance if necessary. Will that be enough against their technology? Martinez asked. They're not prepared for projectile weapons, Blackwood explained. Modern shields are designed to disperse energy weapons, not stop physical objects moving at relativistic speeds. Lisa Reyes looked up from her station. Captain, I'm getting distress calls from the station. The Kargans are boarding. They're taking hostages. Martinez's jaw tightened. The Defiant was the only operational military vessel in the sector. Confederation reinforcements would take days to arrive. Lieutenant Wright, we're out of time. He called down to engineering. Give me whatever you've got. Stand by, Captain, Wright replied, her hands moving across the manual ignition sequence, initiating primary power restoration now. Throughout the ship, old systems began to activate. Lights flickered on. The ancient reactor hummed to life, the sound growing steadily louder until it became a deep, resonant roar that seemed to echo through space itself. On the Kargan command ship, an officer turned to his captain. Sir, the human vessel. It's powering up. The Kargan captain hissed dismissively. Impossible. And irrelevant. What can one obsolete ship do? They were about to find out. Commander Blackwood stood at the tactical station, his fingers moving across controls that hadn't seen real combat in 2 centuries. Around him, the bridge crew worked with intense focus, blowing dust off manual backup systems and consulting old printed manuals pulled from storage. Captain, I've accessed the original combat protocols, Blackwood announced. The Defiant was designed to fight without networked systems. Each weapon can be operated independently. Martinez nodded. That's our advantage. The Kargans won't expect a ship that doesn't rely on modern technology. On the main view screen, they watched as Kargan boarding parties continued to storm the diplomatic station. The sleek Confederation ships floated helplessly, their crystalline cores dark and lifeless. "Sir, I'm picking up comm chatter between the Kargan vessels," Lisa Rice reported from her station. "They're confused about our power signature. They don't understand why we're operational." "Good," Martins replied. "Let's use that confusion. Helm, bring us around behind the smaller patrol craft. Thrusters only, no main engines yet. Let's not announce ourselves too loudly." The Defiant began to move, slowly and deliberately. The old maneuvering thrusters pushed the warship through space with surprising grace. "Lieutenant Wright, status report. Martine is called down to engineering." In the engine room, Wright was covered in grease and sweat, her hands black from manually adjusting fuel mixtures. "Main power is stable, Captain. Weapons systems are coming online, but we have issues. The targeting computers are responding erratically. Can we fire without them?" Wright exchanged glances with Cooper. "We'd have to target manually, using the original optical sights. Like submarine periscopes," Cooper added. "Mechanical, not digital." "Do it," Martinez ordered. "Commander Blackwood, prepare to fire on my command." Blackwood moved to the rarely used manual targeting station, blowing dust off the eyepiece. "I've been practicing with simulations, sir. Never thought I'd use the real thing." The Defiant silently approached the nearest Kargan vessel, a patrol ship half its size. None of the enemy vessels had raised shields against the supposedly harmless human relic. "Sir, I've established contact with Confederation Command," Rise announced. "They're stunned we're still operational. Reinforcements are 3 days out. Tell them we'll try to hold position until then." Martinez stood from his chair. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill." Throughout the ship, crew members raced to their positions. Many had never expected to experience actual combat aboard the museum piece they served on. "Weapons hot, Captain," Blackwood reported. "Rail guns charge, missile tubes loaded with conventional warheads. Target their primary engine housing," Martinez ordered. "Their shields won't be configured to stop physical projectiles." Blackwood peered through the manual targeting system, adjusting the ancient mechanisms. "Target acquired. Fire." The Defiant shuddered as the rail gun discharged, sending a tungsten projectile hurling through space at a significant fraction of light speed. The impact on the Kargan vessel was devastating. The projectile punched straight through their hull before they could raise shields, ripping through their engine section. "Direct hit," Blackwood exclaimed. "Their power core is destabilizing." The Kargan patrol ship began to drift, emergency lights flashing across its hull. "They're responding," Rise warned. "All Kargan vessels are changing course. They're finally taking us seriously." On the Kargan command ship, the captain stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The human ship disabled the Vengeance. "How is this possible?" "Sir," his second reported, "they used primitive kinetic weapons, physical projectiles. Our shields are calibrated for energy weapons." "Reconfigure all shields," the Kargan captain ordered. "Destroy that relic." Back on the Defiant, Martinez felt the ship trembling as the ancient engines pushed to full power. "Evasive maneuvers," he commanded. "Get me a firing solution on their command vessel." As the old warship roared through space, the crew felt a strange pride growing. The obsolete technology that had made them a laughingstock was now their greatest strength. The battle for Outpost Sigma had begun. Lieutenant Wright's hands flew across the control panels as she rerouted power through secondary systems. The Defiant shuddered around her as Kargan energy weapons glanced off its hull. "Rerouting power to forward shields," she shouted over the din of alarms. The old ship had been built with redundancies that modern vessels had long since abandoned in favor of efficiency. Backup generators online. The distinctive sound of the Defiant's main engines grew from a low rumble to a thunderous roar that vibrated through every deck plate. The noise was unlike anything produced by modern Confederation ships with their silent crystalline drives. "What is that terrible sound?" Ambassador Kelrath demanded over the emergency channel from the disabled Viridian flagship. "That," Martins replied with undisguised pride, "is the sound of human engineering." On the bridge, Blackwood called out readings from his tactical station. "3 Kargan destroyers moving to surround us, sir. They've adjusted their shields to counter kinetic weapons." "Then we change tactics," Martins said. "Helm, bring us in close to the largest destroyer. Lieutenant Wright, prepare the electromagnetic pulse generators." "The EMP system." Wright's voice crackled over the comm. "Sir, that hasn't been tested in over a century." "No time like the present," Martins replied. "Those systems were designed to disable Earth vessels during the colonial wars. Let's see how Kargan technology handles it." The Defiant banked sharply, its hull groaning under the stress. As it closed with the nearest Kargan destroyer, energy beams lashed out, scoring black marks across the human vessel's armor. "Hull plating holding at 72%, reported Ryan Cooper from the damage control station. "These old plates were built to take a beating." In engineering, Wright and her team frantically prepared the electromagnetic pulse system, another relic from when humans fought humans. Originally designed to temporarily disable electronic systems without destroying them, it had been considered obsolete once the Confederation adopted crystalline technology. "Capacitors charge," Wright called out. "EMP ready to fire on your command." On the bridge, Martinez watched the tactical display as the Kargan destroyer loomed larger. "Hold course. Wait for my mark." The enemy vessel grew larger on the view screen. Energy weapons continued to pound the Defiant's hull. "They're charging their main cannon," Blackwood warned. "If they hit us with that, our shields won't hold." "Now, Lieutenant Wright," Martinez ordered, "fire the EMP." The pulse emitted from the Defiant was invisible but powerful. It washed over the Kargan destroyer, causing systems to flicker and fail. The enemy ship's weapons powered down as emergency lights flashed across its hull. "Direct hit," Blackwood exclaimed. "Their primary systems are offline." On the Kargan command ship, the captain watched in disbelief as one of his best destroyers drifted powerless. "What weapon is this? How can one obsolete human vessel challenge our fleet?" His tactical officer looked up from his console. "The human ship is using technologies we have no counter for. Our systems are designed to defend against modern weapons." Back on the Defiant, the bridge crew allowed themselves a moment of celebration as the disabled Kargan destroyer drifted away. "One down," Martins said, "but there are still at least 19 more." "Sir," Reyes called from communications, "I'm receiving transmissions from the diplomatic station. The Kargans are taking the ambassadors hostage. They're demanding the Confederation surrender the entire sector." Martinez's expression hardened. "Not while we're still in the fight." "Commander Blackwood, target their next closest vessel." "Lieutenant Wright, how many more EMP charges can you give me?" "3 at most, Captain," Wright replied, her voice strained. "The system wasn't designed for repeated use." "Make them count," Martinez ordered. "Helm, new course. Take us right into the heart of their fleet." As the Defiant changed direction, the sound of its engines grew even louder. The ancient warship roared through space, leaving a trail of stunned Kargan vessels in its wake. The relic that had been mocked throughout the Confederation was now its only hope. The situation had grown desperate. The Defiant had disabled 3 more Kargan vessels, but the ancient warship was taking heavy damage. Scorch marks covered the hull, and several compartments had been sealed off due to breaches. "Status report," Martins demanded, gripping his chair as another blast rocked the ship. "Hull integrity at 41%, Cooper reported from damage control. "We've lost the starboard rail gun. Shields failing." Blackwood looked up from tactical. "Sir, I've analyzed their attack pattern. The Kargans are protecting their command ship at all costs. That's where they must be controlling their disruptor technology from." Martinez studied the tactical display. The Kargan command ship hung back behind a protective screen of destroyers and cruisers. Confederation reinforcements were still 2 days away. "We need to buy time for the civilian transports to evacuate the station," Martine said. "And we need to stop that command ship." "Captain," Blackwood said hesitantly, "I have an idea. It's from an old Earth naval battle, the Battle of Lake Gulf." "I'm listening, Commander." "We can't fight through their entire fleet, but a small team could use a shuttle to approach from the debris field we've created. Their sensors would have trouble distinguishing one small craft from all the wreckage." Martinez considered this. An infiltration mission. To do what exactly? "Plant our last EMP device directly on their command ship," Blackwood explained. "If we can disable their central control, the disruptor field might collapse. The Confederation ships could come back online." In engineering, Wright was performing miracles keeping the overtaxed systems running. When Martinez called down with Blackwood's plan, she paused. "Captain, the portable EMP device would need to be manually triggered," she said. "Whoever plants it would have no way to escape the pulse radius." A heavy silence fell over the comm channel. "I'll go," Blackwood volunteered. "It was my plan." "Not alone," Wright replied. "You'll need an engineer to calibrate the device." "I'm coming too." Martinez closed his eyes briefly. "Approved. But you'll need a third, someone who can fly that shuttle through the debris field while under fire." "I'll do it," said Lisa Reyes unexpectedly. "Before communications, I was trained as a pilot." While the infiltration team prepared, Martinez positioned the Defiant to create a diversion. The aging warship limped toward the Kargan fleet, weapons charging for what looked like a final desperate attack. "All hands, this is the captain," Martinez announced shipwide. "Our goal is to draw their attention for as long as possible. Give our team time to complete their mission." In the shuttle bay, Blackwood, Wright, and Reyes made final preparations. The small craft they would use was itself an older model, lacking the crystalline technology that the Kargan weapons targeted. "If this works," Wright said as she carefully secured the modified EMP device, "the Confederation will have to admit there's value in keeping some old technology around." "And if it doesn't?" Reyes asked. Blackwood checked his sidearm. "Then the Defiant will have fought its last battle." The shuttle launched, immediately cutting power to drift with the debris. From the bridge, Martinez watched them go before turning his attention back to the main fleet. "Helm, take us straight at their defensive line," he ordered. "All remaining weapons, prepare to fire." The Defiant surged forward, engines roaring defiantly. The Kargan vessels turned their attention to the approaching threat, just as Martinez had hoped. Meanwhile, the shuttle drifted silently through the debris field, using minimal thrusters to adjust course. Inside, Reyes piloted with incredible precision, navigating past shattered hull plates and disabled weapons platforms. "We're approaching the command ship's blind spot," she whispered, though there was no need for silence in space. "Their shields have gaps where their launch tubes are located," Blackwood noted, studying a scanner. "If we time it right." The Kargan command ship loomed ahead, its massive hull bristling with weapons all pointed at the Defiant. None of them noticed the small shuttle approaching from below, carrying 3 humans, and one last desperate plan. As the shuttle approached the Kargan command ship, Reyes navigated through a narrow opening in the shields where waste was periodically ejected. The small craft shuddered as it scraped against the alien hull. "We're in," she whispered, powering down to minimal life support. External sensors show no alarms triggered. Blackwood and Wright donned lightweight vacuum suits. "Remember," Wright said, checking the EMP device one final time. "Once we plant this, we have exactly 3 minutes before detonation." "Enough time to get back if everything goes perfectly," Blackwood replied, not mentioning what would happen if things didn't. The two slipped through the shuttle's airlock and magnetized their boots to the Kargan hull. Using portable cutting tools, they created an entry point near what appeared to be a secondary power junction. Meanwhile, the Defiant continued its desperate battle. The ancient warship was now surrounded by 5 Kargan vessels, all firing continuously. "Shields have failed," Cooper reported, coughing as smoke filled the bridge. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 5. Martinez nodded grimly. "Keep firing. Every second we keep their attention is another second for our team." Aboard the Kargan command ship, Blackwood and Wright moved through dimly lit corridors, avoiding patrols. Wright consulted a small scanner. "The central power distribution node should be 2 levels down," she whispered. "That's our target." They found an access shaft and descended quickly. The Kargan ship was eerily quiet, most of the crew focused on the battle outside. When they reached the power distribution chamber, Wright's eyes widened. "This is it, the control center for their disruption technology," she said, examining the pulsing core. "The same technology could be adapted to protect against it in the future." Blackwood stood guard while Wright placed the EMP device and began the activation sequence. Just as she finished, a door slid open, and 3 Kargan soldiers entered. "Intruders," the lead Kargan shouted, drawing his weapon. Blackwood fired first, hitting 2 before diving for cover. Wright completed the activation and shouted, "It's armed." 2 minutes 50 seconds. They fought their way back to the access shaft, Wright pausing to scan as much of the alien technology as her device could record. On the bridge of the Defiant, Martinez received a simple message: "Package delivered." "All hands, brace for electromagnetic pulse," he ordered. "Secure all systems for restart." The remaining seconds ticked down. Blackwood and Wright reached the shuttle just as alarms began blaring throughout the Kargan vessel. Reyes had the engines pre-fired, ready for immediate departure. "Go," Blackwood shouted as they sealed the airlock. The shuttle broke away from the command ship just as the EMP device detonated. A massive pulse of energy radiated outward from the Kargan command ship. Its lights flickered and died, followed by every system on board. The disruptor field that had disabled the Confederation fleet collapsed instantly. Throughout the battlefield, the crystalline cores of the Confederation vessels began to glow again as their systems rebooted. The Viridian flagship Crystal Ascendant was the first to recover, its weapons coming online and immediately targeting the nearest Kargan vessels. The shuttle carrying Blackwood, Wright, and Reyes limped back toward the Defiant as the tide of battle turned dramatically. Confederation ships, now operational again, quickly surrounded the disabled Kargan vessels. On the diplomatic station, the Kargan boarding parties surrendered as their communications with their fleet went silent. 3 days later, in the repaired conference room of Outpost Sigma, Martinez stood before representatives of the Confederation Council. The Defiant floated outside, still bearing the scars of battle but proudly restored to operational status. "Captain Martinez," Ambassador Kelrath said, his neck frills now extended in what humans recognized as respect rather than amusement. "The Confederation owes you and your crew a debt we cannot easily repay." "The NSS Defiant was simply performing its duty," Martins replied. "Perhaps," the Viridian ambassador said, "we were hasty in our judgment of human technology. There is wisdom in maintaining diverse approaches rather than standardizing everything." After the ceremony, Martinez returned to the Defiant where he found Wright in engineering, working on repairs. "They've offered me command of their newest vessel," Martinez told her. "The latest technology, full Confederation integration." Wright looked up, her hands covered in grease just as they had been when this all started. "Are you going to take it?" Martinez ran his hand along the old metal bulkhead of the ship that had saved them all. "I think I'll stay with the Defiant. They're recommissioning her for active service." "Not bad for a relic," Wright said with a smile.